بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We don't see you. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Am I supposed to see you here? No, I don't need to see you. Delayed.
It's about 45 to 50 minutes in advance practice. And yeah, it was no traffic today. It's good. And I made sure I got all the time. Well, a little bit, very little bit. Just a little flurry.
There is no mic.
Okay. Where? Yeah. Oh, yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
There's like a,
Yeah. It's really shot. No, they said 6 more weeks of winter.
maybe we should push a little bit closer. Maybe with this one.
Brian, we're good with the YouTube. Can you send the link? Okay, just
It might be too close, but I don't know.
it looks a little close.
Yeah, but the sound is not coming. We do it.
Yeah, in the kitchen.
I mean, it's gotta be too close, but it's already a little bit.
Assalamu alaikum. So inshallah what we're going to be doing is not only learning about how to fast, we're also going to be practicing it. So for anybody who fasted today, or at least you could pretend like we fasted today, we're going to simulate breaking the fast right now. So that this is putting our knowledge into practice, so that we're not just intellectually ready, we actually have practiced fasting before Ramadan comes. So inshallah we're just going to have our guest Sheikh Tariq Amir just explain a little bit about breaking the fast. We'll break the fast, we'll go pray Maghrib, we'll have a little bit of dinner as if we were fasting, or for those who were fasting, and then we will have our lesson inshallah. So bismillah.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all for having me. So the basis of the breaking of the fast, really it's an aspect of showing shukr, showing gratitude to Allah for the ability to have fasted and for the great reward that is associated with it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions by way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that as-sawm li, that fasting is for me. So what many scholars mention about this is that the reward that we get for the fast is something that we can never even know until we meet Allah in the next life. And so, but what they say is that this reward is so great because Allah is saying specifically that this is for me. And so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he's mentioned to us about different etiquettes, different ways of going about breaking the fast, in terms of what is considered to be the best of ways. And one of the hallmarks of breaking the fast is to make dua when you break the fast. This is one of the many times that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he's mentioned to us that du'as are answered at this time. So when we break the fast, our du'as are answered. So it can be whatever dua that you have, whatever supplication that is on your heart, whatever you want to ask of Allah, this is one of the perfect times to do that. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, as we said before, He loves the person who is fasting. Because one of the aspects of fasting as well, and this is some of the things that we'll talk about when we have the more formal lesson, so to speak, is that fasting is one of those things that is one of the easiest acts of ibadah to do sincerely. Because the reality of fasting is that no one has to know that you're fasting. Like, as Ustad Ryan was saying, is that we could all sit here and break our fast together, and none of us could be fasting right now, and none of us would know. And so, one of the beneficial things about the aspect of fasting is that it is a sincere act, such that as long as you don't tell anyone, no one has to know that you're even fasting. And so this is one of the encouragements of fasting even outside of the month of Ramadan. And so when breaking the fast, the sunnah, the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would normatively do it is that he would hasten to break the fast. So essentially, as soon as we hear the adhan go off, that is the sign for us to hasten to break the fast. It's actually not considered to be it's not considered to be righteous to try to prolong your fasting. Like, to kind of say, well, I can do a little bit more. That's actually not considered to be righteousness. Righteousness is that once you hear the adhan go off, you hasten to break the fast. Typically speaking, what is considered to be the normative practice of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is that he would break his fast with dates and water. Now the thing is that it's not something that is an obligation, but normatively he would break his fast with dates and water, so it's considered to be customary to break the fast with dates and water, and generally speaking it would be an odd number of dates, that whether it be 3, 5, 7, but an odd number of dates and water. And actually the sunnah for drinking water is that you don't just gulp down the water, but rather that you sip the water, that you take a sip. And technically speaking, they recommend is that you actually say Bismillah before taking the water. You take a sip, take it away from your mouth, say Alhamdulillah, then take another sip, while saying, take another sip, but before doing that, saying Bismillah, take it away, say Alhamdulillah, and do it a third time, Bismillah, take a sip, and say Alhamdulillah. That's considered to be the recommended way of drinking water as well, and particularly because water is considered to be one of the greatest blessings that Allah has given us in terms of this worldly life. So these are some of the recommendations. So again, though, it's not a recommendation, it's not an obligation that people necessarily have to break their fast on dates and water. So however, it is recommended if you're capable of it if you don't have dates, to break your fast on something sweet. So if you don't have dates, then some other type of fruit or something like that. And if you don't have water, then milk is a good alternative as well, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he also praised milk. That milk is actually something that the Prophet ﷺ said was very blessed, because it's something that's considered to be a food as well as a drink. And then also, they gave us the good dates. So these are the majdul dates, and so these are the dates that have the seed in them. So the recommendation for how you actually eat the date with the seed is that you take the date into your mouth, and the seed that's in it, that you place the seed on the 2 fingers of your left hand, and then you put it away from wherever, like for example, if there's a platter of dates in front of us, that you would put the seed away from that. And so this way that you're keeping things clean and more hygienic, so to speak. And then, as we said before, the sunnah is that you make a dua while you're breaking your fast, and also in a situation where people are giving you food to eat, that you make dua for your host that is helping you to break your fast. So
حي
And also quickly, the other aspect is that when you break your fast with a date or water, and then you go and pray the salat before you have the main meal, the iftar. So we're going to break for the salat, and then we'll come back inshallah.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا لو يعلم الذين كفروا حينما يكفون عن وجوههم النار ولا عن ظهورهم ولا هم ينصرون بل تأتيهم بغتة فتبهتهم فلا يستطيعون ردها ولا هم ينظرون ولقد استهزئ برسل قبلك فحاق بالذين سخروا منهم ما كانوا به يستهزئون قل من يكلؤكم بالليل والنهار من الرحمن بل هم عن ذكر ربهم معرضون أم لهم آلهة تمنعهم من دوننا لا يستطيعون رد أنفسهم ولا هم ينظرون قل من يكلؤكم بالليل والنهار من الرحمن بل هم عن ذكر ربهم معرضون أم لهم آلهة تمنعهم من دوننا لا يستطيعون رد أنفسهم ولا هم منا ينصرون الله سمع الله لمن حمده الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا بل متعناهم وآباء عليهم قل سمع الله لمن حمده الله
we met the last time.
If I'm late, I'll put in my schedule.
Yeah.
Come down.
Yeah, this is my home.
Get confused.
How about you? Is yours? Yeah, close enough. Okay, so we will follow.
Yeah. I brought a friend of mine with me, Lex. But she's not.
So wait, you refer to your cancer?
She doesn't
Your
have
cancer. You used to, okay.
one of my clients. She's
Okay. I think my father works for, he's a bus driver there. I don't know if you know Salem? Hamilton. I think Hamilton. Probably, yeah.
a couple of years ago. Same here, like.
I grew up in Irving, so I know that place.
And then there's the summer. Also, this is for an intimate opportunity to like connect with other people, which is great. Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
You're making them
Right, right.
three kids. She
She's really
Yeah.
originally from Sudan.
Yes, please.
You probably need
And I saw like a video the other day with a hairdresser that she offered like a free service to a client. She struggled with illness and she was hospitalized. And I seen videos where people who like struggle with homelessness that they have like automatic in their hair. So she helped at the table because she was charged. So it's like to be in a state where you can give that opportunity to somebody. It's like right, you're thinking of giving money, but it's not like that. Everything, you
I was
know.
born in Pakistan in 1992. Again, it's suppressed. Yeah, it was suppressed during the now it's like now it's
But you know what is a woman like
Zima.
it was just
Yeah,
that
during when I was a kid, because I would say yeah, I was quite born in Muslim, but
for you, you can have it.
they just knew.
I know, you can, you know, change it up like I was talking to.
They didn't know who was problem was. They just knew about it. So later I became Christian. I became Orthodox Christian. When I was like 8.
I was like 13 year old that she learned about it.
17, 18, I became.
Because, no, my sister did, right? She like donated her hair for like
I studied in Turkish schools. We used to have in Central Asia, a lot of Turkish schools. And yeah, they kind of do kind of
I was like, I know my daughter did the same thing. So like, I just want to speak to her about my experience.
I was the only Christian.
I look so bad.
Last time in school.
It wasn't that short, but it was like pretty close, like close enough. But I was like, wow, I look so bad now. I'm sorry. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've heard there's older countries where like
When my students came in, it was like,
Yeah, not only Islam, generally religion. So whoever
a few weeks ago, this
other like
and
Christianity,
it was like
I would say only Christianity is Muslim, but not
yeah,
anybody else.
sorry.
But the way like, they would find a way to survive somehow. Christianity is and we have like in my city where I grew up, it's like mosque church. They're all together, you know, like very close to each other.
What type of Christianity?
Russian Orthodox.
I feel like I know what
They
you're
changed
talking
my
about.
name. I became Christian. Call them
They still
didn't do the 30th. Didn't do that bad. I have to keep connected to the screen. You know the screen? Right now, I think every single day.
Even connections, there's more bridges.
It's very there even is like this idea of oneness, the universe moving according to one way, without making a way. I was just missing there. They didn't like pull me in at the brickwork wall though, right? I just like found it on the website how to set that up.
Exactly, right? So and it's also consuming like the organic stuff. Those are the first things that are to be consumed during that state. So it's like even when you feel tired, like beneficial to do something crazy, intense workout. But it could be like being accomplished on the wall, it could be the few sets. But you could go on the first walk for 10 minutes. And it trains your body to get to keep getting energy from stuff. So it's like I feel like I'm excited to work past vaccine like a different light. Like it's more like obviously I don't want to diminish the purpose of vaccine. I guess it's adding a little bit which I wasn't there before. So I'm excited for the possibilities of that. Of course, you know. This is my first time back in a long way. That's real. That's what I said. It was like
Bismillah. Inshallah, hopefully everyone's enjoying the iftar. Inshallah, we're going to start in about 5 minutes. Start our lesson in about 5 minutes, just so we can clean up a little bit. And then anyone who's finishing up their food will start in 5 minutes with our lesson on fasting, inshallah.
I just wanted to show you this so
Sure.
you can have like a little trivia. This will be for the benefits of and then if we wanted to do a trivia, let's give you quick scissors. And it has like a perfume in it. So just a little something to try.
I'm going to text in the group chat about the details of how we're going to execute them. That's cool.
Sure.
It's so interesting. Folded. It's beautiful in its own way. But I agree with you, they're trying to look back on
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العليم. نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر والتذكير ونفذ إفادة استفادة وحتى تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على خير اتقاء والسلام وضاته وقرب بوابه سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وتعليما انك على كل شيء قدير. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. Can everyone hear me good? I was told to make sure my voice was raised, so I want to make sure everyone can hear me good.
Maybe a little bit louder.
A little bit louder? Okay. Okay. Inshallah. If my voice starts dipping low again, just give me the signal and I'll try to raise it again, inshallah. So, how are you all doing tonight?
Full belly.
Full belly? Alhamdulillah. So, I hope I'm not going to get in trouble for this, but I was thinking to kind of do it a little bit differently than I was initially planning to. So, because this is, part of the intention of this is to be more interactive and kind of like get a real hands-on approach to talking about the aspects of Ramadan. Before giving you the whole kind of lecture about different aspects of Ramadan, does anyone have anything it's just look, I've been dying to know about this, this question about Ramadan or fasting or anything like that you want to kind of address before getting into the dars, so to speak? No? Okay. MashaAllah. Everyone's veterans.
I guess I have a topic, but I feel like not that I've heard that I don't think I've heard that anger nullifies your fast, but I guess just talking about the effects of anger on your fast and anything about that.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. That actually was a part of what I already outlined. But alhamdulillah. So the aspect of fasting in terms of anger is that anger is not something that would nullify the validity of someone's fast. So the scholars, they usually mention two aspects of fasting. They mention the aspect of validity versus the aspect of acceptance. So validity is more or less what the fuqaha, what the scholars of Islamic law talk about. And that's just saying look, if you do this, you don't have to worry about making up the fast. And you haven't done anything actually sinful. Whereas more or less the scholars of spirituality, they talk about the aspect of acceptance, meaning that yes, if you do this thing, it won't break your fast, so you don't have to make it up, but it's less likely that your fast will be accepted. And so when it comes to the aspect of things like anger or other types of sins, that's where that's going to fall into that category of things where you're in a situation where it's less likely that your fast will be accepted. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he famously had said that essentially if someone annoys you during the month of Ramadan, and generally speaking it's easy to get annoyed in the month of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ, his advice was to say that if someone tries to annoy you or starts to annoy you, that you say, ana sa'im. So basically you say, I'm fasting. Just reminding yourself that I'm in a state of trying to gain closeness to my Lord, and so I'm willing to overlook this person's shortcomings right now. So that is more or less the recommendation that is mentioned in terms of anger. But again, it doesn't affect the validity of the fast. It's more or less, is it going to be something where it's less likely that my fast will be accepted? Because again, there's two different aspects. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that there are some people, they fast, and the only thing that they get from it is hunger and thirst. And so, again, that's part of how we understand that there are two different dimensions. Anything else before we... So the first thing I was going to mention is that there are certain conditions to make the fast even obligatory. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran that fasting has been prescribed upon you as it's been prescribed upon those before you in order that you may gain in taqwa. So the whole purpose of the fast itself is to gain nearness to Allah. This is why some of the ulama, some of our teachers, they mention is that sometimes we have the question like, how do I know if my fast has been accepted? Like, I'm doing all this act of worship in the month of Ramadan, I'm losing sleep, I'm losing food, they got me praying all night, and I'm doing all these things, and it's a difficulty. How do I have a sign that my fast has been accepted? And one of the things that they mention is that a sign that a person's fast has been accepted is that your relationship with Allah is stronger than it was than when you started. That you have a better connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than when you started. And so as some of my teachers would say, they would say that you should look at yourself before Ramadan, like kind of do a self-check before Ramadan, say, okay, where am I at right now? And then look at yourself after Ramadan and say to yourself, okay, what improvements have I seen? If I've seen any. If you've seen improvements, that is a sign that you've gotten the fruit of the fast of Ramadan. And if you stayed the same or even worse, if it's gotten worse, that's an indication that there's more things that we need to work on. Because the basis of the fast of Ramadan is that you're preventing yourself from your desires so that your ruh, your spiritual self, can grow. This is the concept of the fast, is that we, as some of, like one of my wife's teachers, she puts it like this, is that for some of us, we have a nafus, we have an ego that is kind of like the Hulk. Like we feed into it, we do everything that we can to kind of strengthen it, so it's very strong. And unfortunately, on the flip side, our ruh, our spirit, sometimes can be kind of weak and frail. And when we go into the month of Ramadan, it's a time to kind of reverse the situation. So we start to take away from the desires, and we start to do things that actually strengthen our spiritual self. And the aspect of the spiritual self versus the worldly self it's in opposition to each other. That basically, the more that you grow spiritually, the more that this worldly life becomes less and less important. Not to say that we don't enjoy this world, or that we kind of go into a state of seclusion from the world, but it's an aspect of, we start to see reality as it truly is. That ultimately, my ultimate goal is that I'm going to be leaving this world and going to meet my Lord. And so how do I want that to be? And so Ramadan, it gives us this perfect opportunity as an obligation to kind of put ourselves back in focus. However, the aspect of Ramadan, when I started out mentioning the verse of Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the month of Ramadan, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also mentions that for the person that is not able to fast, that if he's on a journey or if he is sick, that he can fast ayyam al-ukhar, that he can fast a number of other days. So meaning that not everyone has to fast, and so there are conditions that the ulama mentioned, that the scholars mentioned in terms of who actually has to fast. So in order for the fast to become obligatory for a person, they have to first be Muslim. I mean, it kind of seems kind of like necessary, but the thing is that some people, especially in our times nowadays, people like to do intermittent fasting and so on and so forth. But in order for fasting to actually be an act of worship from an Islamic standpoint, a person has to be Muslim. They also have to be sane, meaning that if a person does not have control of their intellect, they're not required to fast. And actually, if a person was a person who was born in that type of situation, a person that was born without the faculties of their intellect, that's actually considered to be a person of paradise. And so any person that that has that situation, you should give them, as good a treatment almost as if you give your parents. And hopefully, all of us are giving our parents our best treatment, inshallah ta'ala. But, so a person that is in that situation, they are not required to fast either. Also, a person has to be baligh, which in English would be pubescent. So puberty, according to Islamic scholars, and I'm mentioning this for those who may have children, that puberty is essentially by the time a person reaches 15 years of age, 15 lunar years, which would be a little bit shy of 15 Gregorian years, so 14 and some change, that is when a person necessarily reaches puberty. Prior to that, once a woman has her first menstrual cycle, or a man may have a nocturnal emission, that is when they're considered to be pubescent if it happens before them reaching 15 years of age. So for example, for those of you who may have children, they're not required to fast in the month of Ramadan until those things happen. Either one of those two biological things happen, or they reach 15 years of age. However, can they fast? Yes, but again, it's not an obligation for them. And if they decide that, mom, dad, like, yeah, I fasted until Dhuhr, but I need some food now. There's no obligation for you to require them to keep fasting. So if they are inclined towards it, alhamdulillah, that's great, but there's no obligation for it. The fourth condition is that, and this is going to apply more to the sisters, is that being free from haid or nifas, meaning that a woman is not on her menstrual cycle, nor is she in her postnatal bleeding cycle. That this is considered to be something that is specifically for women, that in the month of Ramadan, that part of their act of worship is not the fast in of itself, but obeying the command of Allah. So that when a woman is not on her menstrual or postnatal bleeding cycle, then she does fast, but when she is on her postnatal or menstrual cycle, she does not fast, and that is the way that she draws near to Allah. That, because I mention that because sometimes, throughout the years, sisters have said that, they will sometimes say that they may feel like they're not being able to benefit from Ramadan when they're menstrual or if they're going through postnatal bleeding. And the case really is that by a woman obeying the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by not fasting, that is truly her means of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so as one of our teachers, some of you may know him, Imam Muhammad Bindas, he would say is that we don't worship. Meaning that worship is a means, it's not the end, it's not the point. It's a means to get closer to Allah, but the actual point is to get that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us to do that, that is what's most beneficial. So for women, if they are on the postnatal or their menstrual cycle, it's not for them to continue to fast. And so another question that can come up is that what happens if a woman starts out fasting and then sometime during the day her menstrual cycle starts? If that is the case, then for that woman, her fast would end at the time that her menstrual cycle starts, and that would be one day that she would have to make up. And so what is recommended is that if a woman does eat, is that she just may not, it's just be preferred if she didn't eat in front of others who are fasting, but even that is not an obligation. But once the menstrual cycle starts, it nullifies the day of that particular day of fasting. And she would just make up that day sometime before the next coming Ramadan, if she is able to. And then the last condition that requires the fast for a person is that they have the actual ability to. So people who are sick, people who are possibly elderly, such that fasting is a difficulty upon them, then these individuals are not necessarily required to fast. And depending on the situation, there can be other possibilities in terms of how they would go about their acts of worship in that time. And so these are the conditions. So essentially, if a person falls into, or should I say does not fall into one of these 5 conditions, then the fast of Ramadan is not going to be an obligation for them. And so that is kind of like the basis. And then in terms of the actual fast of Ramadan, there's only 2 things that a person necessarily has to do for Ramadan, technically speaking. And that is that they have the intention to fast, and that they leave off those things that will break the fast. That's the only 2 things that you're required to do in the month of Ramadan. Have the intention to fast, and then leave off those things that break the fast. Now, another question that sometimes comes up in relation to that is that with the intention, because I know this was a thing for me, like when I first So just I was talking to some of the brothers, but for the sake of the sisters that didn't hear, I was born Muslim to Muslim parents, but I didn't formally start to learn about Islam until I got to college. And so when I first started learning about this, someone told me that you had to have a intention specifically for fasting, stuff like that. And I'm like, one of the thoughts I have is like, wait, so I got to make up all those fasts? Like, you're talking about years of fasting. But so the thing is that when we say that a person needs to have an intention for the fast, more or less what we're talking about is that we're talking about the aspect of a person having acute knowledge of what it is that they're doing. So as one of my friends, Sidi Mustafa Azam, would put it, is that, look, did you get up for suhoor? Did you make sure that you ate before Fajr came in? Did you make sure that you stopped eating and other things that break the fast before? Like, that's your intention. As long as you know going into the day of the fast that you are planning to fast this day, that's more or less your intention. Now, is it considered to be good to make a specific intention? Yes, it can be considered to be a good thing to make a specific intention. But again, it's the aspect that sometime between Maghrib and before Fajr comes in of the day, that you have a firm resolve that I'm going to be fasting this upcoming day. And another thing that can help people as well is that some of the scholars, they mentioned that you can actually make your intention on the first night of Ramadan just to fast the entire month. And in this way, you're covered for the entire month. So many scholars, they recommend for people to do that as well. So this way, because what will happen is that sometimes from our own selves, we can create doubts in our heads. Like, wait, did I make my intention? So if you just make the intention the first night of Ramadan, I intend to fast the entire month of Ramadan, then inshallah that will be sufficient. Now, some common things that may come up that people ask about in terms of, also, before we get to there, when we say the aspect of imsak, in terms of restraining from those things that break the fast, there are a little bit more to the aspect of fasting than just not eating and drinking. And so we just want to make sure that those things are clarified. So not eating and drinking, that's the basis, that you can't eat or drink anything. However, there are other things that also are mentioned. So for example, and I'm not saying that anyone would do this, but just as clarification, is that if a person were to force themselves to vomit, that would also break their fast. So meaning that if you get sick and you happen to vomit, that is not something that breaks your fast, but if you force yourself to vomit, that actually would break your fast. If a person is married, or even if they're not married, and they have intimate relations with someone, that will also break a person's fast. Or even if a person were to allow themselves to come to a climax intentionally, meaning not that a person, and usually this happens more with men than it does with women, so like a nocturnal emission, that does not break your fast. But when you do something intentionally outside of actual intimacy that would cause you to come to a climax, that would also break a person's fast as well. And then there's some other things that scholars differ on in terms of things that could possibly break the fast. So for example, the aspect of getting injections. If I have a doctor's appointment and I get blood drawn, or if I get a vaccine or anything like that, does it break the fast? The scholars, they differ about it. So what they generally speaking say is that if you're able to either do it at night, which I guess because we're in the winter months, it's possible to have an evening appointment or something like that. But also if you can make your appointment after the month of Ramadan, this way you get outside of the difference of opinion. But there's difference of opinion in regards to that. Even things like the use of an inhaler or eye drops, scholars, they differ about whether these things actually break the fast or not. So in those type of situations, if it's something that you can avoid, then it would be a situation where you're going outside of the difference of opinion. But if it's a situation where you were to do some of these things, just know that there are some scholars that will say that those things do not actually break the fast. So some of the common scenarios that can come up in regards to fasting is, what happens if I'm fasting and I'll be the first to admit this happened to me before. I remember when I was younger, and I think I had some McDonald's French fries or something like that. And I haven't eaten McDonald's in so long, but when I was a kid, McDonald's French fries, like, that would be the thing that got eaten before we even got home. So I had some McDonald's French fries or something like that, and I was waiting for the Maghrib to come in, and for whatever reason, I got super excited. You know, before Maghrib came in, I forgot I was fasting and started eating the fries. SubhanAllah. So the question becomes, what happens if that happens? Like, what happens if you legitimately forget that you're fasting and you eat something? And so the answer to that question is that if it's legitimate that you forgot, like, you know, you completely slipped your mind that you were fasting, that is actually considered to be excused. Not only is it considered to be excused, but as the Prophet Muhammad mentioned to us, is that is actually considered to be a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if He causes you to forget that you're fasting, you accidentally eat, that is completely excused. And so that is the case of the person that accidentally breaks their fast. So if you eat by accident, then that is something that will be overlooked. And then another thing that comes up sometimes is like, you know, what about, you know, can I put anything in my mouth? Like, you know, I'm fasting all day, like, you know, my breath is not necessarily going to be in its best shape, so to speak. And like, you know, I got to go to work and I got to go to school, and, you know, I don't necessarily want people to be offended, you know, just being by me. And so the aspect of putting something in your mouth is that, generally speaking, it would not be permissible to do that. There are some exceptions that are given. So, for example, and one of my teachers, Sheikh Khalil Abdul Rashid, when he was doing a Ramadan prep at NYU, he had mentioned this, is that, like, for example, tasting of food, is that, technically speaking, it would be possible for someone to taste food, and actually the ulama, they like give different scenarios in which case it would be permissible to do so. So my teacher was mentioning, like, you know, in some of the fiqh books they actually mention, and hopefully none of the sisters have a situation like this, but they mention, like, you know, if a wife has like a really, you know, really shadeed, like a really aggressive husband, like, you know, the food has to be, you know, very specific, then it would be permissible for her to taste it to avoid any conflict, but you need to rinse out her mouth and not actually swallow it. Or another example that they give is, like, for example, if a person is cooking for a large community, like they're cooking for a large amount of people, and they need to taste the food in order to be able to make sure that, you know, it's not, you know, overly spicy or overly salty or anything like that, that they can taste on the tip of their tongue and then rinse their mouth out so that they don't swallow what they actually put in their mouth. However, it's still considered to be better if you don't do that. So, like, for example, if you have a child or something like that can taste it for you, that would be considered to be better than to actually taste it yourself. Or even the aspect of, like, brushing your teeth. Some scholars are a little bit more lenient than others with it. And the reason why I say that is that, for example, generally speaking, when we talk about brushing our teeth, we're talking about using toothpaste. That is where it becomes more of a gray area, because the concept being is that if a person were to brush their teeth and some of the toothpaste would actually go down their throat, that would actually be something I consider to break the fast. Because the basis of it is that there's nothing requiring you to brush your teeth, and there's the possibility of doing it outside of a time when you're fasting. So meaning that you can brush your teeth before Fajr comes in, or you can brush your teeth after Maghrib comes in. So what some scholars mention, some scholars, again, some are more strict than others. So some scholars, they would say that if you do brush your teeth, it would be considered to be permissible, but you should do it very carefully. That you should brush your teeth with your face facing down, so that if the toothpaste does flow, it's going to flow out of your mouth and not down your throat. And you should use a very minute amount of toothpaste, and that you should wash your mouth out to the point that you're confident that the substance of the toothpaste is out. And we say the substance, not the taste, because if you're going to try to get the taste out of your mouth, good luck. So one of my teachers, he mentioned that if, like, you rinse your mouth out like a good 5 times with water after brushing your teeth, you should pretty much be confident that all the substance of the toothpaste is gone. However, some scholars, they're a little bit more conservative, and they would say that it's just better not to altogether, and that if you feel the need to brush your teeth, then you can just brush your teeth without the toothpaste. So this way you don't have to worry about anything going down the throat. Because this is also indicative of other possibilities. So for example, making wudu or making ghusl, because these are either going to be obligations or recommendations. So for example, wudu is going to be an obligation. So when we wake up from sleep, or if we use the restroom, we have to make wudu. So according to some scholars, the gargling of the mouth, when you rinse out the mouth, is considered to be recommendation. However, in the month of Ramadan, it's considered to be something that you do not do. Because if you were to gargle and the water went down your throat, that's considered to be exaggeration. And by doing that, your fast would, technically speaking, be broken. Because the gargling is not something that needs to be done. And so if you gargled and the water went down, then that would be something considered to have broken the fast. However, if you're just lightly rinsing your mouth out and still water goes down, then that does not break the fast. So as long as you're not exaggerating, it doesn't break the fast. But if you do something to exaggerate, which in general is going to be considered to be gargling, that would break the fast. And the same with ghusl. Like for example, if a person either has to make an obligatory ghusl, or they're making the sunnah ghusl for the day of Friday, for example, for a Jummah, that as long as you're not doing something to exaggerate their washing, and some water gets into their nose and goes down their throat or something like that, that would be excused as long as they didn't do anything to exaggerate, to cause the water to be more likely to do that. And then there's recommendations such as taking the suhoor. So the question becomes, what happens if I skip the suhoor? Like for example, what if I was just really tired last night and I just Fajr came in and all of a sudden it was the day of fasting. So the suhoor is not a requirement. So just in case anyone doesn't know, suhoor, we're talking about the pre-dawn meal, the meal that we eat before Fajr time comes in, because the fast of Ramadan starts at Fajr. And I just want to make that clear because I know that even people that have been born Muslim or have been Muslim for years, they would, because sometimes like they'll read a translation of the Quran or something like that, and they'll, see like, you fast until you see the light, and like, I've heard about stories of people like literally like they're eating up until you can actually see the light of the sun, and it's like, you ate way past the so we're talking about the Fajr time. But if you wake up and it's already Fajr time, it's not permissible to eat anything, but the fast still remains an obligation. So if you skip suhoor either intentionally or by accident, the fast still remains intact, and you have to continue that fast for that day. And then another question that sometimes arises is the aspect of salat, because sometimes I know, at least for me, I had the question like, what happens if you fast but you missed your prayer? Like, what happens if I'm fasting but I miss Dhuhr or I miss Asr, or in some cases, like, let's just be honest, for some people, like, they fast in Ramadan but they may not be praying their salat. What happens in that case? And so in that particular situation, the fast of Ramadan is completely separate from the salat itself. So technically speaking, even if a person wasn't praying anything, like Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Taraweeh, Qiyam al-Layl, like all that came about and they didn't pray anything, but they did fast that day, their fast is valid. Now, whether or not their fast is going to be accepted, that's a whole nother concept. But from a technical standpoint, their fast is technically speaking valid. Now, the other aspect that we want to talk to as well, because I don't want this to be just like a do's and don'ts type of thing, because that's not the point of Ramadan. Like, Ramadan is not about just do's and don'ts. Again, the point of Ramadan is to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, from the standpoint of like trying to maximize our Ramadan, is that one of the things that is highly recommended in the month of Ramadan from a spiritual standpoint, even though it's still kind of like from a physical standpoint, is in the case of our food, is that we should be very, very lenient with our food. Meaning that our food should not be a situation like, I know when I was younger, someone had told me that, well, you're fasting, during the day, so you're missing a meal. So when you break your fast for iftar, you need to make up for the meal that you missed. And it's like, that's actually not the concept from Islamic standpoint. That the concept from Islamic standpoint is that you only, even outside of the month of Ramadan, is that you only eat enough just to stave off hunger pains. That, some people, they might be familiar with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says that, that a person should have 1/3 of their stomach for food, 1/3 of their stomach for water, 1/3 of their stomach for air. And like, for some of us, we kind of look at that, okay, that's the sunnah. So I'll have 1/3 for food, 1/3 for water, 1/3 for air. Actually, that's the maximum. Like, the maximum that you're supposed to do is that 1/3. And that really, the basis is that you're only supposed to have a few morsels or a few bites, just so that you're not, kind of like bent over out of hunger. And so, part of the way of maximizing our Ramadan in regards to food is to kind of be very, very light when it comes to food. That, usually, like, I tell people, like, for your suhoor, you don't necessarily have to get up and like make the whole like pancake and eggs or biryani or like, have like a whole big smorgasbord to say like, I gotta get through the day, so, I'm just gonna pack it on. Like, has anyone ever done that? Yeah, I know. I haven't done it intentionally. Like, me and my brother, we were kind of a little different. Like, me and my brother were not the best morning people. You can ask my wife. So like at, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, like, that's not the time that I'm trying to even cook anything anyway. But like, my father, like, he definitely is that type of person. So like, what I'm saying this to say is that oftentimes when you do that, it actually has the opposite effect. Like when you stuff yourself for suhoor and then you try to go through the day, it actually has the opposite effect that you're looking for. Like, it makes it even harder to get through the day. Like, you're just kind of like lagging and so on and so forth. But if you have like a conscious breakfast, a conscious suhoor, meaning that you have something that's nutritionally dense, but not much of it, that usually helps even more. Even to the point that I know some people that they'll just have some sips of water for suhoor and that'll be it. And they'll be fine for the day. So, being light with your iftar, with your suhoor, and then with iftar as well, being light as well. Like, sometimes NBIC, they still, is it just the weekend iftars now, or? Sometimes, okay. So, but usually if NBIC has iftars during the month of Ramadan, and so you don't have to necessarily have 2 portions of, going to the line once and then you wait to get to your second round. Is that, being light with your food, because again, the basic concept is that we're not trying to make up for what we missed, but we're actually trying to train our nafus. We're trying to train our soul, our lower desires. And this is why Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions that, and if I could like put in a recommendation, is that I would recommend for anyone to read Imam Ghazali's translation of his book on disciplining the soul and breaking the 2 desires. That is probably one of the. It's 2 chapters from his larger work, his Ihya al-Din, but that is a very beneficial work. But he mentions in that is that if a person is able to control their desires of their stomach, because he mentions that the base desires that people have, and particularly from the time that they're born, is the desire for food. Like, a baby actually starts to learn how to eat before they're even born. That's why, babies, they suck their thumb in the womb and things like that, and they actually practice swallowing the umbilical fluid and so on and so forth. They're practicing to learn to be able to eat when they come out. So Imam Ghazali, he mentions is that if a person is able to control their desire for food, meaning that they can dictate exactly when they're going to allow themselves to eat and how much, that is an indication for that person that they're able to control all their other desires. Because if you can control your desire to eat, which actually keeps you alive, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing you that you have the capacity to control every other desire. Meaning that the concept is like, there is no excuse, so to speak. And so this is why even the aspect of eating food is that we don't want to kind of overdo it. Where it's like, we we go into the line and like we don't even have enough room to put anything else on the plates, and we're still trying to figure out, okay, maybe if I, just move this over a little bit, I can fit some more biryani, and then, trying to get the dessert and so on and so forth. The aspect of it is that, to be mindful of not overdoing it. And then because you have that spiritual aspect of not having the food be a main aspect, is that now it gets into the aspect of increasing in worship. That the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in a very famous narration, he mentions, "Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban, ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi." That whoever stands, and what many of the scholars mention in terms of the meaning of standing, is that there's, generally speaking, two possibilities. One is, you could probably say it's the more prevalent, is talking about the Salat al-Tarawih, praying Salat al-Tarawih, which is the prayer that's prayed after Isha. And then the other one, of course, would be the aspect of praying Qiyam al-Layl or Tahajjud, praying in the night. Is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that whoever stands in the night, stands in Ramadan, man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban, with iman and looking for the reward from their Lord, that all their previous sins will be forgiven. And so the whole basis of Ramadan, as we said before, is to get this nearness to Allah. And so by controlling our food intake, again, it allows for our spiritual self to rise. And so this is the time where we should try our best to increase in all those things that are going to get us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whether that's going to be increase in reading of the Quran, or increase in giving charity, or increase in our prayers in the night. This is a recommendation that many of our teachers give, is that because we're already naturally going to be getting up for suhoor, that you should strive to save, at least 10 minutes or so that you can dedicate that to some act of worship. So like making the goal not just make sure I eat before Fajr comes in, but eat, but then also have some time that you can engage in some act of worship. It's actually mentioned that this is the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, that they would stop their eating of suhoor in enough time that they can recite about 50 verses of the Quran, which is, they did some estimations to say about 15 or 20 minutes before Fajr comes in. And so these are, recommendations in terms of trying to increase in our acts of worship. Because the reality of Ramadan as well, from the more spiritual aspect of it, is that it is a reality, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's chained up the shayateen, He's chained up the devils. And so the question that sometimes arises is well, if it's a situation where the devils are chained up, then why am I still doing X sin, or why do I still want to do X sin, and so on and so forth? And scholars have given different interpretations of what that means. One of them is that the sins that you may do or that you may incline towards in the month of Ramadan are indication that those are things that are within you yourself, meaning that those are things that you actually desire yourself. And so it's a situation in which you want to really start to try to work on a plan of how you can overcome those desires. And again, Ramadan this is why some people call Ramadan a madrasa, a school, is that Ramadan is that time where we're learning that we have the capacity to control our desires. So what some of our teachers recommend is that if you find yourself in a situation where you're committing an act of disobedience, in particular if it's repetitive, is that you should actually start taking notes of it. That you should actually, write it down, write the situation behind it, and if you are conscious of it, write the reason why you did it, so that you can actually see for yourself what's going on, so that you can take steps to because I'll give you an example. Like if a person struggles with backbiting, for example, and they start doing this practice of like writing down every time it happens, if they start to notice that every time that I backbite, it's when I'm talking to so-and-so, or every time that I backbite, it's after I had like a big meal or something like that, this way you can start to see, okay, what are the patterns that are causing me to be in this situation? So now you can start to see, okay, I need to, when I'm around so-and-so, I gotta be very careful. Or when I'm finished, if I have a big meal, then I have to know that my mouth just gets a little happy or whatever the case may be. But it's this aspect of really trying to zero in and hone in on yourself and trying to better yourself. Because as one of my friends has said, some years ago in relation to our time in Ramadan, and as we have mentioned before, in terms of like trying to ascertain if our Ramadan is likely to be accepted or not, is that we don't want for the Eid to come around and that it ends up being nothing more than a welcome home party to shaitan. Where it's just like, we do all this work in Ramadan, like, we're, doing all this fasting, praying all these extra rak'at, we're giving in charity, reading Quran and so on and so forth. And then at the end of the fast, we're just like, okay, alhamdulillah. All right, now I can get back to what I was doing. It's that, we want to make a situation where this is something that we continue on up until the next coming Ramadan. And so this is why our teachers, and we'll probably end with this so that we can open up for greater discussion. This is why some of our teachers, they would remind us of a particular line of poetry. Ryan probably heard this as well, Tareem. Where our teachers, they remind us of this particular line of poetry where it says, Eid laysa liman yalbisu jadid, Eid liman ta'atuhu yazid. That the Eid is not for the person that wears new clothes. Because yes, the sunnah of Eid is that you wear either new clothes or your best clothing for Eid. But the line of poetry is making a distinction. It's saying that the Eid, that is not what the Eid is for. It's not for the Eid fashion show that, generally speaking, happens. But rather, Eid liman ta'atuhu yazid. The Eid is for the person who increases in their obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why we said before, the basis of understanding whether or not your fast was likely to be accepted is the aspect of, did you have this increase in your relationship with Allah? And so that's why our focus, ideally in the month of Ramadan is, okay, yes, I'm suppressing my physical desires, but how can I now do things that will help to even further increase my spiritual self? And in that is how a person, inshallah, will maximize their Ramadan. And so this is why we talked about the aspect of kind of doing a self-evaluation before Ramadan starts. Like, whether you want to do it tonight, tomorrow, sometime before Ramadan, just kind of see where you're at. Like, okay, my salats are like this, my charity is like this, my reading of Quran is like this, whatever the case may be. And make a plan, make a goal for yourself. I want to at least increase by this much. So I want to, instead of reading just one page of Quran, I want to read at least 2 pages of Quran. And so on and so forth. And you'll be amazed at the benefit that can come about it. Many people, they've had, as some of the scholars call it, their opening came in the month of Ramadan. I know it happened for me. I wasn't always as, I hate to use the term, but I can't think of anyone else. I wasn't always as religious as I am now. And it wasn't until a particular Ramadan that, it kind of like finally clicked, so to speak. And so many people have had their openings come in the month of Ramadan. And so it's a thing where you don't want the month of Ramadan to go past and you don't get the chance to fully try to take advantage of it. Because the reality of it is that we never know if we're going to make it to the next Ramadan. And we want to make sure that any moment that Allah places it in, that we try to take the maximum advantage from it, inshallah ta'ala. So, inshallah ta'ala, I probably went over time a little bit. I'm sorry about that. But I know we also wanted to, open it up for discussion, and then I think we got some more fun activities than just listening to me talk. But thank you for having me again, inshallah.
So, okay, I think this is really helpful, just to have a refresher, because I think for converts year by year, sometimes you're on autopilot mode and we don't have that time to do that self-evaluation. So I really appreciate that. Inshallah, I think that's something that I did want to ask a question. So I think what I've experienced is that Ramadan is just different at stage 1 when you convert versus at year 10. And so what are some of your advices for 5 years, I know what I'm doing, but I want to dive in more. And then 10, 15 years where it's like, all right, now I know better. So what do I need to tighten up? So what is your advice for like those stages?
So I'm actually going to invite both you and Ryan to answer your question as well. But in general, and the thing is that I was actually, when you first had said it as well, I was going to say that even people who are born Muslim still have some of those same experiences. It's that, like for example, I was born Muslim, but as I was talking to some of the brothers, it's like I had my own kind of conversion. Like basically, like when I started to take the religion more seriously. So, my suggestion is like, for a person who's just first starting out, is that make your focus just trying to get close to Allah. Like, make that your focus. And the reason why I say that is that there are a lot of different technical things that I didn't talk about. Like, I didn't talk about the moon fighting. I didn't talk about the parking lot issue. I didn't talk about, like there's like so many different things that are going to take place. Not to mention, and I'm just being honest in the reality of things, is that for many converts on their first Ramadan, it can also be a very lonely experience, unfortunately. And inshallah, with the groups like this and other initiatives that, Ryan and others are trying to establish, is that we can try to make it better. But the reason why I say that it can sometimes be a lonely experience, because if you're brand new to a community, or maybe not even, you don't even have a community, you're coming from a family who's not Muslim, so it's basically like you're kind of like just on your own. Ryan was, talking to us earlier, mentioning how like his first Ramadan was during COVID. So you can only imagine, like, what that experience would have been. And so the reason why I say, like, just try to make it like your focus on Allah, like, now that we've kind of covered like the bare essentials, like, making the intention, abstaining from those things that necessarily break the fast, just make your focus on whatever it is that you're capable of doing that is a means of getting closer to Allah. Just take it, just take it bit by bit. Like, don't necessarily worry about, even from the standpoint of Tarawih. And the thing is, like, this is being recorded, so I can't, like, back out of it. But I know this is coming from scholarship, though. Like, so for example, there are some scholars who actually, like, will mention that Tarawih, like, for example, ideally would be 20 rak'ahs. But from the standpoint of many scholars, they would say that Tarawih itself is a sunnah. So that even if you pray 2 rak'ahs, and that's it, that still counts as Tarawih. So the thing is, like, I would say, like, for a convert, if you want to come and you want to pray 8 or 20 rak'ahs in the masjid, alhamdulillah. But if you find, like, you can't necessarily sustain that, don't necessarily feel bad that, you're not able to sustain that. I mean, in all actuality, like, how many people is this anyone's first Ramadan? Okay, so everyone's experienced Ramadan before. Okay, second, okay. So the thing is that for any one of you who's possibly come to a Tarawih prayer, which you'll oftentimes notice, I know it happens at NBIC, is that even like the bulk of the congregation that's here for Tarawih, once 8 rak'ahs hits, I'm out. Like, and the thing is that in some cases you'll have, some people who are dipping even before the 8 rak'ahs, and so on and so forth. So the thing is that, yes, we want to try to maximize our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of things happening around you that my advice would be to not allow that to be a distraction for you. Just like, really focus on your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that moment. Because as you build up your time as a Muslim and you're able to interact with Muslims more, you'll probably have more Muslim friends, and you may even have family members that may become Muslim with you, and so on and so forth, is that then you're going to get into the aspect of social. So like now when you start to get to like, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 of being Muslim, now it's going to be a situation where you have like a basis that you have seen already, and now you can start building from there. So the thing is that that's why I said, like, do your own self-assessment. Like, everyone's at a different place. Like, my place is not the same as yours, it's not the same as this one or that one. So just do your own assessment and really just try to make something tangible that you can hold on to. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the thing that He likes the most is that which is consistent. It's not the thing that you can do a whole lot of, just do it once. Like it's like, all right, I can pray 20 rakas on Friday, but that's it. But rather, like even if you were to just pray 2 or 4 rakas every night, that would be even better than just like 20 rakas that you only pray once. And so again, that's why I would say like that first Ramadan in particular, make that really about just you and Allah, in like whatever capacity that you have. And and the thing is that can help also, unfortunately, with sometimes the loneliness that sometimes will happen, because if you make your focus you and Allah is not bound by time or space. So as we were just talking on Friday, about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that أَنَا مَعَهُمْ إِذَا ذَكَرَنِي, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I am with the one who remembers me. That anytime that you remember Allah, Allah is with you. And that is not bounded by time, it's not bounded by space, it's not bounded by whether I get along with this individual or not. This is all you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so and this is like a side note, this is like kind of also the reason why, generally speaking, for people who convert to Islam, we recommend that they don't get married within the first 2 years. That's a whole other side note. But the thing is that as someone relatively brand new to the religion, you really want to kind of get a firm footing upon you and your relationship with Allah, and then build from there. And so once you have that foundation, then like in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, now you know kind of like what you can build from that. But like I said, I'm gonna ask you to give your input as well.
I can go first.
I think one thing that comes to me when I think about each year going by and Ramadan coming is that, similar to like how I teach in high school, I basically say all the important stuff in my life. I'm gonna continue my study, my master's degree, whatever. Do this and that. I'm gonna do it in the summer. I'm gonna do this in the summer. I'm gonna take this vacation in the summer. Like the summer is like that time where, as a teacher, I know I'm gonna have the availability and I'm gonna be in the right mind space to take extra steps in life. Somebody who's in like a corporate lifestyle, maybe that's only winter break. We're like, I'm gonna clean the house on winter break or this and that. So I think for Muslims, Ramadan is that time where when we have high aspirations for something, it's where the blessing is. It's very concentrated, the entire community is there, and we should maximize and take massive steps during Ramadan to the best of our ability. And the thing is that a massive step for someone who just accepted Islam might be praying 5 times a day and making sure that every single day, 5 times, we pray. It might be learning how to read the Quran. It might be reading the Quran finally for the first time from the beginning to end, the translation. But I think out of respect for Ramadan and knowing how much blessing is there, we should set high aspirations, and then we don't beat ourselves up if we don't reach it. But out of respect for the month, we have high hopes, inshallah. And Ramadan, it comes and it goes. So I recommend we take our PTO days if we can. If you got PTO, take your PTO in Ramadan. Don't use it on some other day for a 3-day weekend. This is more worth it. Last 10 nights of Ramadan is worth the PTO.
Yeah, I second that PTO thing.
I really, was trying to just take all of it from you.
Yeah, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. But yeah, so that PTO thing, that's definitely, I've seen some brothers that used to do that. I was like, dang, why not think about that?
I have some do's and don'ts questions. So if a sister has to go to the gynecologist, and usually those exams involve going inside, is that break fast?
So according to some scholars, yes, and according to others, no. And Ryan, you can double check me. The Maliki school is no, right? Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, according to some, yes, according to some, no. So again, in that type of situation, if a person is able to reschedule their exam either after sunset or outside of the month of Ramadan, it can be considered to be better. But like if it's something necessary and a person has to do it, then they would not be considered to be sinful if they ended up having to do that. When it comes to the aspect of medicine, like we mentioned before, is that if a person is sick or they need some type of medical treatment, then they are excused from that. It's just that they would just have to know that if they are physically capable of fasting, I mean like this was like a one-off thing and they would normally be able to fast, they would have to make it up outside the month of Ramadan.
Another question. Two scenarios, I think they're under the same category. Let's say like your gums start to bleed, and then you taste it and you end up swallowing that blood. Second scenario, let's say you have mucus in your sinus cavity, and it kind of like loosens up and it goes down the back of your throat. And you like swallow and you realize I just swallowed mucus.
I'm having like all the questions you're asking me are questions that one of our teachers, he did like a whole Ramadan like prep guide type of thing, and these are all questions that he mentions. So in the first case with the aspect of blood is that in the case that a person's gums start to bleed, blood is considered to be najasa, it's considered to be filth. So even outside of Ramadan, it wouldn't be permissible to swallow it. So essentially, if it accidentally goes down, that's separate, meaning that, generally speaking, anything that you do unintentionally in Ramadan is going to be excused. However, if a person intentionally does it, like, they taste the blood and then they're just like, you know what, they're just going to swallow it, it would break the fast, and technically speaking, it would be, more or less sinful because, again, the aspect of swallowing filth is not considered to be permissible, swallowing najasa. So it's a situation where, if it does happen, try to, like what one of my teachers would do, and this is going to be related more to your second question, is that during the month of Ramadan, he would carry around a handkerchief with him. So like, if you know that you may be prone to bleeding gums, then you may want to have a handkerchief or something like that. Like if you're in a place where you can't like easily spit the blood out, this way you have a handkerchief readily available. With the aspect of phlegm, there's a difference of opinion in regards to it. So some scholars, they're more conservative with it, and they say that if a person has phlegm, that is considered to be in the external portion of their body. So for example, if you have mucus that is in your nose, but it's at a point that you can actually expel it by just blowing your nose, but you instead just, suck it back out, suck it back down and let it go down your throat, some scholars will actually say that that does break your fast. And the opposite would be in the case of like acid reflux or mucus that comes from the chest. Like they mentioned, this is like really getting technical. I was told not to get too technical, but this is really getting technical. So if anyone's familiar with the Arabic alphabet, there's a letter, you have what is considered to be huruf khalqi, the throat letters. So there's a letter kha in the Arabic alphabet. So they say that if the phlegm reaches to the point of where the letter kha is in the throat, that is the place where you could easily expel it. So that if you had phlegm come up to that point and you allowed yourself to swallow it, that would break the fast. However, that's one opinion. Others would say that that's all a part of just like your natural body fluids, so it doesn't break your fast. However, with blood, it's a different situation. And also with the blood, what would be recommended to do, and this is depending on different scholarly opinions, but also it would be recommended to rinse out the mouth as well after the blood comes into the mouth.
I did just want to add to your point, and one thing that helped me during my years of Ramadan was community and like mentorship and companionship, because I think whether you're year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, like your Ramadan is definitely going to be dependent also too on who you're around. So like if you don't have anyone around and you're around your family, you're not benefiting that much, because like your family doesn't know that you're fasting. You can't backbite that, you can't be around smoke and all of these things. And so just with all of that being said, if anyone needs support or wants support, we are thinking about doing like a Ramadan buddy system. And so, hopefully, we'll do a poll soon, but I do think that that's really important to have like good companionship during that month if you're like kind of new.
Sahba is definitely sahba, meaning companionship. Companionship in Arabic. That is a very crucial thing. It's just that the reason why, like I had mentioned, like the aspect of loneliness is that unfortunately, not all of our masajids or Islamic organizations are up to that, up to that challenge, so to speak. And so, just from years of experience, I know that many people have said especially like their first Ramadan or so have been a lonely experience. And again, hopefully that won't be the case. As much as we possibly can. That this is the point of groups like this and things like that, so that people can have a buddy system. But definitely, if you have someone that can help support you, that is something that has unmeasurable benefit. Like even from the standpoint of like going and studying, is that they mentioned you should have someone that you have as your close companion, because it helps you. Because some days you may just not be up to it. Like I compare it to, back when I was in high school, I used to have my Arnold Schwarzenegger dreams, and so I used to be in the weight room and stuff like that. And I had a few friends of mine who were kind of all in that same boat. So what would happen is that on the days that I didn't feel like lifting, he would be like, no, we're going to the gym. And the days he didn't feel like lifting, I'm like, no, we're going to the gym. And so similarly, from the standpoint of fasting Ramadan and even other acts of worship in terms of Islam, is that if you have someone that can be there as a support system, that definitely can be a major benefit. So definitely, if you have that support system, that is a great blessing. This is actually from the prophetic narrative, is that the Muslims were always a tight-knit community. Islam was never meant to be an isolated religion. So the scholars, they've gone into great detail about this, and particularly because that question that you asked is something that the Prophet Muhammad himself was asked directly. An interesting thing about it is that the Prophet he said yes and no.
You know why?
So, but I'll quickly try to explain the basis of it. So, the Prophet he was asked that same question by two different individuals. One happened to be an elderly man, another happened to be a young man. To the elderly man, he said yes. To the younger man, he said no. And the basis of it is that, I'll just give you the summation of it, is that the scholars, they mention is that if by kissing your spouse is likely to lead to more than that, then the answer is no. If by kissing your spouse is just a means of showing your affection as you part or something like that, then the answer is maybe/yes. And the reason why I say that is because some of them even still, they encourage that you don't even necessarily do even kissing, in the sense that part of the basic aspect of the fast is to kind of suppress your desires. So even even though kissing, just kissing on the cheek or kissing on the mouth just as you part is not necessarily considered to be truly indulging to your desires, they still would say to kind of even to that extent to not. But in terms of does it break your fast or not, then as long as there's no transfer of saliva, so you're getting into more passionate kissing, then it would not break your fast technically. But again, if there's the fear that it would lead to more than that, then the answer is no.
I think let's go rapid fire on the question list. You ready with that?
Yeah, what time is the competition?
It's just 7:30.
7:30? Okay. Yeah, so we gotta go rapid fire.
So I'll go rapid fire. You ready with that?
Yeah, sure.
9 questions or so. Just gonna. All right, so everybody.
Because we have that one gift for the brother and for the sister. So
Right.
it should be
So what we'll do is everybody take out the note app on your phone or something where you can write down your answer. All right. Everybody, we're being honest here. It's a Ramadan workshop, right? I don't think it's not like in high school where I can't do this in high school, right? But all right. So we're gonna ask 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 questions. Just write down your answer to each question. Okay. Whomsoever gets the most correct from the brothers will get a prize, and from the sisters will get a prize, inshallah. Brothers, it's heavy competition. It's one-on-one. Okay? I remove myself from the competition. Okay, bismillah.
And obviously I can't answer.
And I think some of these questions he didn't go over, so it's kind of like applying the knowledge that he taught now. Like when we fast, when we're learning the basics, you get the foundation, and then we need to learn how to apply it. All right, so number 1. If you accidentally eat, is your fast broken? Yes or no? Number 1, if you accidentally eat, is your fast broken? Accidentally eats. This happens, believe it or not. Number 2, do you have to make intention verbally in order to fast? Do you have to say, I intend to fast tomorrow, verbally? Yeah. Do you have to say that? Yes or no? Number 3, does being angry break your fast? Okay. Number 3, does being angry break your fast? Number 4, can you brush your teeth while fasting? Maybe we should say, add the details regarding that. Should we say at what point does brushing your teeth break your fast?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So at what point would brushing your teeth break your fast?
At what point does it break your fast to brush your teeth? I'll give you a second to write an answer there. Next question. If you sleep through suhoor, the morning, the pre-dawn meal, can you still fast? If you sleep through suhoor, can you still fast? Meaning you don't eat before Fajr time. Number 6. If you started your day, or if a woman started her day fasting, and menstruation came in the afternoon, meaning before Maghrib time, does the fasting day still count? Okay? Started the day fasting, menstruation came in the middle of the fast, does the day still count for fasting? Next one, does putting allergy eye drops in your eyes break your fast? Someone's gonna have to use, this is like a hard question. Next one, does getting a blood test done during the day break your fast? Again, this is like applying the knowledge type of thing. Getting a blood test done. Second to last one, are you allowed to break your fast with something other than dates and water? He answered this before Maghrib we prayed. And the last question, if you forgot to pray Dhuhr on time, is your fast still valid? If you missed one of your daily prayers, does your fast still count? And you don't want to ask Pat any other questions?
No. And as everyone is wrapping up, one thing as I was thinking about it, as he was speaking, that I meant to mention that I didn't, is that in the Ramadan, there is a zakat called zakat al-fitr that is also an obligation primarily for the head of the household. So if you're in a nuclear family where a husband and wife, then the zakat al-fitr is an obligation on the husband, and he has to pay it on behalf of all the people that he's responsible for. And if it's just a woman, then should be the head of her household, and she would have to pay it on behalf of herself and any dependents that she has. And the relied upon position, or should I say the more precautionary position, is that you would pay it sometime before the Eid prayer. So sometime before the Eid al-Fitr prayer, that you would pay your zakat al-Fitr. Now the price range varies slightly year to year, but that is also a part of the Ramadan as well.
Okay, bismillah. You'll give the answers. You'll go down each one. Everyone grade yourself, all right?
Yeah, right.
Correct?
This is
not correct?
This is an honor system.
Yeah, honor system. Correct or not correct?
So if you accidentally eat, is your fast broken? We talked about that with my McDonald's episode. No, it is not. As long as it's accidental, then that's considered to be a mercy from Allah. Do you have to make intention verbally in order to fast? No, you do not. We said that is something where if you have the acute knowledge of what it is that you're doing, and that is your intention. Does being angry break the fast? We talked about that as well. Anger itself does not break the fast, even though it can take away from the acceptance.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salam. Hayya ala salam. Hayya ala falah. Hayya ala falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
Okay, so just so that we make sure that we're gonna not be late for the salat. Does being angry break the fast? We mentioned that it does not break the validity of the fast, but it can break the spirit of the fast. Can you brush your teeth we said at what point does brushing your teeth break the fast? If it goes down the throat. So if you're brushing your teeth and the toothpaste goes down the throat, it will break the fast. If you sleep through suhoor, can you still fast? And we said that not only can you still fast, but it's still an obligation for you to fast. If you started your day fasting and your monthly cycle started, in the afternoon does the fasting day still counts? No, it does not. You would make up that day after the month of Ramadan. Does putting algae eye drops in your eyes break your fast? We mentioned that this is actually, so you pretty much can't get this wrong because there's a difference of opinion. Some scholars will say yes, some scholars will say no. Does getting a blood test done during the day break your fast? And we mentioned this is a similar case where scholars differ. But many would say possibly no, because it's not giving you any type of nutrients, nor is it going into a body cavity. Are you allowed to break your fast with something other than dates of water? We talked about this prior to the Maghrib prayer, and so we said yes. And if you forget to pray Dhuhr on time, is your fast still valid? And we talked about this as well, is that even if you didn't pray any of your prayers, technically speaking, your prayer is considered to still be, your fast is still considered to be valid.
Okay, let's see.
Anyone got 100%?
Anyone got 100%? MashaAllah. 2 with 100%. Good. You got 100%? MashaAllah. You got 100%? MashaAllah. Okay.
So the both brothers got 100%?
Now we gotta do a tiebreaker.
Alright guys, battle to the death.
Battle
Wait,
to the death.
so how many people got it?
These two sisters got 100%. These two brothers got 100%.
2 sisters, 2 brothers. Okay. So we got to get a tiebreaker question. Huh?
I said, can I forfeit my tiebreaker?
All right. So how should we do the tiebreaker? Just like
Hard question.
hard question. It has to be a hard question that they possibly know. All right. What are the 2 interpretations of Qama, standing in the month of Ramadan, that I mentioned today? I said there are 2 interpretations of the word Qama in the month of Ramadan. Standing.
She's writing your answer.
Oh, people are writing it.
Wait, do we,
No, you can write it.
oh, yeah.
Say again.
Are we saying or?
Well, she's writing it, so no.
I haven't read.
So you have an answer. Okay.
I
so
do.
You have an answer?
Doesn't know. Doesn't know. You know, and you don't know. And what's your answer?
My answer is that it's either standing for tahajjud or standing for tarawih.
We'll stay with the weird or staying with the Hajj.
So there you go.
The gift said
probably know better.
Bismillah, Mali, can you tell us about
Yeah.
what's coming up?
So next week, continuing this discussion of making the most of Ramadan. Louder? Okay. So making the most of Ramadan, we're going to continue next week here on Saturday. Again, will be not so much about the do's and don'ts, but about what Alicia's question was. How do we, if you're in the beginning phase, like the first 3 years of Ramadan, how can you make the most of it as it can feel lonely, like he did mention, we all know that. So we'll talk about that next week in our Sound Hearts.